Morning.
Morning.
Good to be back here. It is good to have Miss Betty back with us this morning, and just good to be around family and friends again, and be able to sit in a nice warm building outside of the wind and to worship God and study His Word, and to spend some time looking at the idea of our safety and the idea of where our lives, where our thoughts, where our hearts belong. In God's hands is the idea this morning. Jeremiah chapter 18, starting in verse 1, is where I want to start today. The word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord, arise and go down to the potter's house, and there I will let you hear my words. So I went down to the potter's house, and there he was working at his wheel, and the vessel he was making was spoiled in the potter's hands. And he reworked it into another vessel, as it seemed good to the potter to do. Interesting illustration by Jeremiah here. And it's not really an illustration. It is something he saw. It is something that he witnessed. It's something that God wanted him to see. Jeremiah, I want you to get up and I want you to go down to this place. You're going to spend a few minutes there. You're going to understand and you're going to hear my words. I want you to watch what this potter's doing, how he's trying to form a vessel, and that vessel just doesn't cooperate. Collapses into something else, so the potter reworks that vessel. Jeremiah, I want you to understand. That is you, that is life, that is how it's going to be. You think you are going to be one thing, the potter's going to make you into something else. While things seem to be falling apart, guess what? The potter is making you into something else. Jeremiah, I want you to relay this message to the world. There are 2 points I want to consider this morning, and then some examples at the end. I want to think first and foremost about the idea that the hand of the Lord is a hand that creates. And when I say it creates absolutely everything. But point number 2, it provides and protects as well. He is not just a God that creates and leaves everything alone. He doesn't just put it out there and say, go deal with life on your own. He doesn't say, here it is, make the best of it you can. He says, I'm your God. And in me there is safety, and in me there is refuge to be found. I will provide for you if you allow it. I will protect you if you allow it. And then, like I said, once we've looked at these 2 points, I want to actually look at a few examples, biblically speaking, of people who understood the Lord created, people who understood the Lord provided, and people that didn't get it so much. People that said, I'm going to take care of it myself. I'm not going to let God provide. I'm not going to let Him protect. I don't need God. And then I want to apply those to our lives. I want to apply those to the way we deal with life and the way we teach others and the way we show them who God is. So number 1, the hand of the Lord is a hand that creates. He, from the beginning, has created absolutely everything. Without Him, there is nothing. Without Him, there is not. We don't exist. Without Him, the world does not exist. And if we can't agree on that point, then where do we start? That has to be the groundwork that we start on, is that there is a God, and He created us in His own image. So once we get to that, once we understand that there is a God, that He created us and He created this earth, that He set everything into motion, He continues to direct it, then our response to that is that we worship the Creator. We worship the hand of the ones that made everything rather than His creation. And we are so guilty as a people at times of worshiping the creation rather than the Creator. We look and we behold I do it all the time. I driving to and from work, seeing the sunrise, seeing the sunset, and I look at the beauty and I'm in awe of it, and if I'm not careful, I start to think about that beauty rather than what created that beauty. I start to think about how magnificent this earth is rather than how magnificent the Creator is. So I'm as guilty as others. Exodus chapter 34, verse 14, for you shall worship no other God, for the Lord whose name is jealous is a jealous God. God said early on that, look, I demand you worship me. I will not tolerate you not worshiping me. I will not allow you to put another God before me. There is nothing more important than your relationship with me, is what God says. There is no one out there that's more important. There is nothing I've created that is more important than the Creator. He said, you will have no other gods before me. God says, I demand your respect, and I demand you to recognize that I created you. We're told in Isaiah chapter 48, verse 13, that his hand laid the foundation of the earth, and his right hand spread out the heavens. That he set all of this in motion. My hand laid the foundation of the earth, and my right hand spread out the heavens. When I call to them, they stand forth together. God said, not only did I lay this all out the way I wanted, when I tell this world what to do, it has no choice but to obey me. If I tell that mountain to rise up, it rises up. If I tell that mountain to fall down, it falls down. If I tell the rain to come, it comes. If I tell it to cease, it ceases. God said, I did all of this. I did it so that you know that I am God. So that you know that I can and that I will and that I do control everything. And that if I can control the weather, if I can control the mountains, if I can lay out the foundation of the earth, if I can spread out the heavens, that I can provide for you, that I can take care of you. See, the world right now is so wrapped up in the idea of the uncertainty of what's going on. Is the virus spreading? Is it dying? Is it man-made? Is it God-made? Is it a curse? Is it a blessing? Why are some people dying and some people living? Why do some people get sick? Why do some people not? That we've forgotten that God is in control. We've forgotten that God says, in my hand is refuge. I have power over everything. And we're looking to the government to solve our problems, or to doctors to solve our problems, or to some other professional to solve our problems, instead of saying, God, what's your desire in this? Where's your will? How do we use this to bring about good for you, God? We've set up the government as our God. We've set up the doctors, the nurses, the healthcare workers. We've set all of these other people in front of our God. And all of these people are important. All of these people can be used by God. They can be an instrument of His. But we forget that, and we make them God. And that's where the problem lies. See, God says that I made the earth. He said, I made the heavens. I laid it out. I made the mountains. They listen to me. When I tell them to stand forth, they stand forth together. God says, I made this, and I made you. Some of my most cherished possessions are some of the old things that my grandmother and my great-grandmother and things that they made by hand. And that I still have laying around, I still have in the house. And the idea of that handmade gift, it's a connection to them. It's intimate. It's not something that was gone and bought at a store. It's something that somebody put time and effort and thought into. Some of the best Christmas presents parents will ever get are things that were made by their children. They are things that you will never forget. A handwritten note, a handwritten sign, something that they put their heart and soul into. The rest of the world may look at it like, what in the world is that? When you wouldn't trade it for all the gold that's in Fort Knox. God says, that's you. He said, I handmade you. Yes, I handmade this earth. Yes, I handmade everything around it. Yes, I put time and effort into it. But I saved the best for last, and I put a soul into you. I created you. He said, I expect and I demand that intimate connection between me and you. I expect you to understand that you are mine and I am yours. I am your Father. I am your God. I am the one that loves you. See, if the world understood that today, there'd be a whole lot less pain, there'd be a whole lot less heartache, there'd be a whole lot less fighting. We wouldn't be talking about bombings that happen within the borders of this United States, because God would win. Because at the end of the day, He's going to, whether we're on His side or not. God will win. But when we and the world and those around us and those that we love here on this earth understand that God comes first and that we put Him first because He created us, because we have that intimate connection, then priorities change. Relationships change. The way we deal with each other changes. The way we see that lost soul changes. The way we deal with our family that so often aggravates us changes. And we start treating them with the love of God, rather than being short, rather than being curt, rather than just being this rude existence that we've become at times. We become an instrument for God's use. But God didn't just make us. God didn't just throw these parts and pieces together. He didn't just wrap us up in this flesh and put us on this earth and say, I'm done with you. That's the point of Jeremiah chapter 18, starting in verse 1 there. The understanding that God continues to shape us. When the world breaks us, when everything around is crushing us, when we don't get molded into the thing we think we should be, God is still actively working as the potter. He is still molding this clay that is our lives, and He is creating it into something that is useful for Him. See, we don't always know and understand what the world needs. We don't always know and understand what our husband or what our wives, what our sons, what our daughters, what our mothers and fathers need. We don't understand sometimes what we need. So we have to rely on the potter. We have to rely on the one that understands everything that is going on and created everything that is going on, so that He can make us into what He needs us to be, rather than what we think we should be. We may think we're this broken vessel over here. God says, I am molding you into something that is beautiful. I'm going to take the broken pieces of your life. I'm going to take the things that don't make sense to the world. I'm going to take this vessel that doesn't look right, and I am making it into exactly what I need. Jeremiah chapter 18, verse 4 says, as the potter saw fit. Not as the vessel saw fit, not as what the vessel thought it should be, but as what the potter understood it must be. As He continues to mold us, as He continues to make us into what He needs, as He continues to make us into a vessel that's useful for us or for Him, He continues to provide and protect for us as well. David was absolutely confident that the Lord's hand would be there against his enemies, and that he would be saved, that he did not have anything to worry about as long as he was fighting on God's side. Psalm chapter 138, verse 7. Though I walk in the midst of trouble, you preserve my life. You stretch out your hand against the wrath of my enemies, and your right hand delivers me. David said, I am absolutely in the midst of a battle. I'm walking through things that are troubling, things that are disturbing, things that should have everybody scared as they think. David said, I'm not scared though. I'm not of this world. I live in God's hands. I know that you stretch out the hand against my enemies, and that your right hand, it's going to bring me through. It's going to deliver me. David said, I'm not worried. I'm not scared. He said, I know whose hand I'm in. This was a lesson, though, that Belshazzar did not get in Daniel chapter 5. I mean, we know that in Daniel chapter 2, his father receives this message from the Lord. And it's this interesting dream that has to be interpreted, and it's basically, hey, things are going to change because you're not following my will. There's going to be other kingdoms because you're not doing what I've told you to do. You are not living according to this godly plan, so your kingdom will not exist forever. Yet Belshazzar did not get that. It was a personal message delivered by God, and it should have been evident, you would think. So instead we see him come back. We see him write on the wall with a finger. Things are changing. My people will win. My word will win. My authority will win. God says, I've got a plan. This is the way it works. Whether you like it or not, I continue to protect my people. I continue to provide for them. And I continue to keep them safe from people like you. The problem begins, though, that even when we hear and we know and our mind kind of understands that God creates, that He provides, that He protects, that He is all-knowing, He is all-powerful, He's got everything under control. While we, on the surface, know that, we forget to live it. We want to take matters into our own hands, or we want to put them into the hands of somebody else on this earth that we trust. Put them in the hands of men. Put them in the hands of loved ones. Put them in the hands of somebody that we don't even know, but they sound like they're smart. They sound like they have our best interest in heart. They sound like they know what they're doing, so I'm going to trust you. You take care of me. But see, where we put our trust in ourselves, or our trust in other men or other women, we got an issue. Because God says you put your trust in me. You put your life in me. You put your faith in me. You put your very being in existence in me. If we put our lives into the hands of anybody else, be it ourselves, our friends, our family, our loved ones, the government, the doctors, the lawyers, whoever, if we don't put our lives in the hands of God, we will never live up to our potential that exists in God. We will never do all that we can for Him. We will never be all that we can. We will never be the instrument for God that He desires us to be and that He created us to be. And there are a myriad of examples that we could look at here. There are things that we know, that we've seen, stories that are familiar of people that took matters into their own hands. Moses comes to mind in Exodus chapter 2. Moses saw something that was not good. He saw one of his own people being beaten, and he said, I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to go out and I'm going to kill that Egyptian. And from that day forward, he became a fugitive. He ran from Pharaoh because he decided, I'm not going to wait around for God to handle this. I'm not even going to wait around to ask God what I should do about this. I'm just going to jump to a conclusion that I know best, and I am going to go kill this person. Even then, though, we know it wasn't the right decision. We know that murder is not a good thing. We know that it was not how he should have dealt with it because he never consulted God. But we do see God continue to mold. We do see God continue to make. We do see God continue to use Moses down the line. Even at times against Moses' own wishes. We see God come to Moses in the form of a burning bush and say, you are my instrument. I'm going to send you back to Egypt where you fled from. And you are going to be my mouthpiece there and you're going to deliver my people. And we've had this conversation, you and I have. We've talked about it in these services. Moses came up with every excuse he could possibly come up with. God, not me. I can't talk. You realize I'm a fugitive. You realize they want to kill me. You realize I'm not well spoken. You realize there are others that are more qualified. God, I'm not the one. God, I know you created me. I know that I'm yours. But while your hand wants to direct me over here, I don't want to be directed there. So I don't want to live in your hand. I don't want to place my life in your hand. I don't want to place my safety in your hand. I don't want to place my future in your hand. I'm good. I'm here. I'm tending sheep. Life's good. Don't send me back there, God. But God did. He sent him back there. He said, I'm not going to listen to your excuses. You are mine. I created you. I know I put the tongue in your mouth. I'm going to put the words in your mouth. I put the staff in your hand. Throw it down. Look what happens. I am in control is what God says. I I can do this. Moses, just trust me. Moses, just listen to me. And he goes and he gets them and he brings them out. And everything is going fine there for a while. And then they get almost to the promised land. And the children of Israel decide that I know what I need to do. God has said we can't go in yet, but we're going to take care of this. We'll be all right. What does God know? Why do we need to trust Him? Yeah, He's got us this far, but we can handle this ourselves. We don't want to wait on God anymore. We don't want to wait on His directions. We don't want to wait on His instructions. We don't want to wait on His time. And as people, we've done the same thing. God, I know you got a plan, but it's taking too long. I don't want to wait on your timing for things to be right, so I'm going to take things in my own hand. I'm going to do it my way. Deuteronomy chapter 1, starting in verse 42. And the Lord said to me, say to them, do not go up to fight, for I am not in the midst, lest you be defeated before your enemies. Pretty plain and simple. Moses, you go tell them that they cannot go fight if they expect to win. I am not with them right now. I will not protect them. I will not save them. They are not fighting on my authority. Hold still and wait. We'll get there when we get there. When the time is right, we will fight. When the time is right, we will enter. When the time is right, we will win. So I spoke to you, and you would not listen. But you rebelled against the command of the Lord, and presumptuously went up into the hill country. Then the Amorites who lived in the hill country came out against you and chased you as bees do, and beat you down in Seir as far as Hormah. And you returned and wept to the Lord. But the Lord did not listen to your voice or give ear to you. So you remained at Kadesh many days, and days you remained there. You see what happened here? Children of Israel said, we don't want to wait on God. We're going to go fight this battle whether He wants us to or not. And we just expect Him to deliver us because He always has. But He didn't. The verse literally says they got beat down. They took a thrashing. So the response, we go back and cry to God. God, why didn't you protect us? Why didn't you save us? Why didn't you give us this victory? Why? Because you weren't doing my will. You weren't living in my hand. You weren't allowing my hands to guide you. You took matters into your own hands. God says, I don't work that way. You do my will. I don't do your will. I'm not a genie in a bottle. You can't summon me anytime it's convenient and leave me at home when it's not. He said, I am not that God. But Moses' life was a journey. He learned to trust God. He learned to put his hand in the lives of God. He learned to put his faith in God. And as such, we see his life develop. We see his life change. We see him become an instrument, a tool that is useful for God. The rich fool wasn't that way in Luke chapter 12, starting in verse 13. He trusted in himself. He trusted in his actions. He trusted in his words. He trusted in his obedience. He trusted in all these things. I've checked all these boxes. I'm going to do it my way. You expect me to do more? No thanks, God. I'm not going to do more. I've done enough. You're going to have to accept me right where I am. I've done all that I'm going to do, God. Then we see in Luke chapter 18, starting in verse 18, the rich young ruler who was rich. And he liked it. And he trusted in it. He wasn't going to go any further. No trust in God who provided those riches. No trust in God who had got him to this point in life. No trust in God who had woke him up that morning and put him in this place where he could be with Christ. I'm going to trust in myself. I'm going to trust in my riches. I'm going to trust in all the stuff around me. We see Saul at a time take matters into his own hands and offered sacrifices that he had no right to offer. We see him when he's told to go out and make sure that you kill every living thing, all the animals, all the people, then he doesn't do that. God, we were going to offer these sacrifices. We just kept the best so we could give it back to you, God. It seemed appropriate. We wanted to offer sacrifices to you. We wanted to bless you. We wanted to give it to you. God says, that's not what I commanded you to do. I commanded you very specifically to go and destroy everything. So as such, because Saul decided he knew better than God, because Saul decided he could bend God's will to his own, the kingdom is taken out of Saul's hand. It's given to David, a man who is said to be after God's own heart, a man who understood where God's will was and understood that while he did not always make the right decisions, he always came back. He always put his trust in God. He always strived to do God's will. When Asa trusted in God, when Asa put his life in God's hand, God delivered him. When Asa said that I want to do things my own way, that I want to establish this peace treaty, I'm going to do it the way I want. God, this isn't what you commanded, but it seems good. It seems like a good idea. It's a good offering. It's a good opportunity for me. We see that there was temporary peace, but there was long-term war. God had not commanded it. God had not authorized it. On the other hand, we see David. David is one that knew the safest place to be was in God's hands. That while people were chasing him, trying to kill him, while there was war around him, while people were battling, while people were turning and going to other gods, David said, my God is my God. And that is where I have to be. David said that's the safest place. And we see a very similar parallel where we see David and Jesus both commit their lives to God. David's not perfect, Christ was. But David was a man after God's own heart. Christ said, not my will but thine be done. God, let this cup pass from me, but don't let me try to override your will, God. Don't let me try to take things out of your hands. You do what you have to do with my life. And in the end, we know where it led. It wasn't pleasant, but it was necessary. Practical application for our lives, for the lives of those around us, for the ones who are trying to lead to the gospel, for the ones who are trying to teach about God. If we are the type of people that at times tries to just literally take that bull by the horns and do things on our own, how's that going to work out for us on Judgment Day? I mean, we see the biblical examples of how it worked out. God, I don't need you. I will handle this myself. I'm fine. I don't need help from anybody else. I don't need the church. I don't need the prayers. I don't need the fellowship. I've got this. I'll be all right. On the day of judgment, what are we going to stand on? What are we going to say? Well, it seemed right in my own eyes. That's what I thought I should do. Or if we are the type of people that just likes to step back and say, I'll let somebody else handle this. You know, the elders, the deacons, the preachers, the song leaders, I'll let them tell me what to do. I don't need to study for myself. I don't need to learn. They sound smart. They sound like they know what they're doing. Government, I'll let them tell me when I can worship, when I can't. How can I assemble, how I can't. I'll let them tell me, is it safe to be out or do I need to stay home? I'll put my trust in other people. Are they going to stand between us and God on judgment? Are they going to stand up there and say, well, he did what I told him to. God, go ahead and let him in. It'll be all right. God's not going to hear that argument. It doesn't work that way. We must ask ourselves, are we taking matters in our own hands or putting them in the hands of man? Or are our lives and our soul and our eternity in the hands of those who were nailed to the cross? Because that's where it has to be. Our eternity is found in the hands of the man who was nailed to the cross. Our God, our Creator. if you need the prayers of the church, if you need to put your life into the hands of God, if you need to give your life back to Him because you've been taking things on your own, understand that it starts with obedience to the gospel. It starts with baptism. It starts with knowing that God is the only way to heaven and saying, I will submit to your will, God. Hearing the gospel, believing it, and obeying it. And then choosing God daily. If you need the prayers of the church, if you need to sit down and study, if you need help figuring out what God's will is, let's address that need now as we stand and sing.